Hello and welcome back to Wine. This is One Bottle, Three Questions with me, Nelson Barry, and Mike Best, Master of Wine. Today we're drinking 2023 Sauvignon Blanc Private Bin Villa Maria with a senior winemaker, David Ropa. Let's start right away with question number one.
Dave, the question is very simply how to maintain consistency in a big brand. So you make a lot of bottles of wine every year, and whether you buy that in a supermarket, whether you buy that in a restaurant, where you buy that around the world, we're really interested to get your thoughts on what are the sort of key perspectives, key themes maintaining consistency in a big brand.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Look, that's such a great question because it's a really important part of what Villa Maria is. You know, we've been around for a long time now, over 60 years, and one of the key aspects of our success, I think, has been the consistency. So, sort of breaking it down, obviously you've got different vintages to consider, right? Every year's a little bit different. Some are cool, some are hot, some are dry, some have got more rain than perhaps you'd like. So, to be honest, I think a lot of it for us is the teamwork. You know, we've got a really close-knit team of key sort of stakeholders across all parts of the business, and we all work very closely together. And, you know, as you get a new season, you need to adapt. So in the vineyard, for instance, you have changes in leaf cover in hot versus wet years, and making sure you're still able to pick at optimum ripeness levels of flavour, so that we have a range of flavour profiles to then create blends from. The different sites, particularly in Marlborough, is really important. So a big advantage that we have at Villa Maria is the size of our vineyard portfolio, and that really reduces the sub-regional risk that there are always areas that outperform others, and so, you know, we always have a wide range of flavours available due to the breadth and depth of our vineyards, which really do span the full scale of Marlborough. And perhaps just to cover off a little bit about the differences, you know, in the Wairau Valley in the north, that's a very large, long glacial valley that's was the sort of the first part of Marlborough to be planted, and that's typically really warm and sunny, and it's got sort of deep alluvial, free draining soils, and that tends to be where you get that really punchy, riper tropical passion fruit, guava, grapefruit sort of notes from the Sauvignon Blanc with those thiol intensities that give it that really distinct Marlborough character. And then as part of the Wairau Valley, you've got the southern valleys, and that sort of runs just south of the Wairau Valley, where it's a little bit cooler. Topography is a little bit different. It's got a bit more of a hillside aspect, which is sort of from the foothills of the Wither Hills. And again, those soils are glacial influenced, and there's a little bit more clay in some of those areas as well. And then if you go to the south in Marlborough, you've got the Awatiri Valley. So parallels the two other valleys. It's much more rugged. It's really windy, very much cooler, and that's a little bit to do with the proximity to the ocean that you've got on the north and the eastern side. It's a bit drier. You've got a combination of river terraces and floodplains, and I guess the flavours that you see from that in Sauvignon Blanc tend to be that more fresh cut herb, methoxypyrazine, limey, snow pea, bell pepper. The wines from the Awatiri have a lovely fine acidity and sometimes have this lovely chalkiness about them on the palate. So really quite diverse, and I think bringing combinations of those into a blend is really important. It gives you a classical Sauvignon Blanc, but interestingly enough, that diversity actually gives you the chance to highlight those distinct areas, and we sort of showcase a lot of those in our higher tier, particularly single vineyard sites, and that's where the wines themselves do end up having a signature, and we actually do expect sort of vintage variation in that. And there's plenty of other areas. There's clonal influences, I suppose, that you know, we're looking for. And in Marlborough, the vast majority of all Sauvignon Blanc, in fact, is just one clone, MS. And you know, that's New Zealand's very strict biosecurity rules make importing clones quite difficult and quite expensive. So we've actually got a research institute in Marlborough, the Brigado Research Institute, who's actually very deep into a program of building a library of different Sauvignon Blanc plants to make, I guess, or to address a a change in climate, if you like, there's different market opportunities. We're looking at, where does Sauvignon Blanc go from here? So having a library, if you like, of vines is quite exciting. So always looking at vines that either are maintaining that iconic Marlborough style or perhaps offer a novel something different that markets will be looking for in years to come.
Obviously, we can't cover off everything in that, but I just wanted to go back to the difference between that sort of regional differences between Wairow and Awatere and so on. How would you expect the wines to be different structurally? Because I think it makes sense in terms of the flavors, absolutely, and often that's what people focus on. But even from your kind of blending perspective, there's going to be structural differences between those wines, and even things as simple as like differences in ABV that would be important when you've got a target ABV that you need to hit and so on. Are there differences there that you find?
Yeah, they are. And look, Villa-Maria, as we mentioned, talked about, it's got a swathe of vineyards across the region. So, and it's important to get, pick when the flavors are there, where the balance is there, without, the tropical fruits blowing out too much and you start to lose acidity. You want that lovely balance of bright freshness that Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc's renowned for, with that lovely acidity. So, we're typically looking at vineyards, particularly in the Wairow Valley, that are ripening earlier, being that warmer part of the area that's leading into harvest. Typically, we know that there are going to be blocks within that part of Marlborough that are typically pretty much ready to go sort of end of the second week of March. You can almost, we've done historical sort of track backs over 10 years, and it's almost the first day of harvest is within maybe 4 or 5 days, even though you've got different things. So some of those characters, you've got that more sort of greener passion fruit perhaps at the early stage as you get sort of 10 days into it, and you've got that riper yellow passion fruit coming through. And at the same time, you're almost looking at how the flavors in the Awatere are developing, and all going well, you can almost bring in the majority of your Wairow fruit before the Awatere is ready. In a warm season, you might be seeing the flavors in the Awatere starting to, almost track the same as the Wairow, and then you're looking at your logistics pretty carefully, seeing what harvest capacity you have. Do you pull some of your Wairow harvesting team into the Awatere to try and grab those flavors when you want them? So, but yeah, we're lucky, I guess, being that cool climate, that even though the Wairow Valley is warmer, the style of Sauvignon Blanc does retain that really fresh, vibrant, natural acidity. And again, that's a big part of that style of Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc that New Zealand's been able to achieve for a long time, and really, I guess, put us on the map globally as a fine wine producing country. And I probably didn't mention it, probably almost 70% of the Marlborough source is that one valley, the Wairow Valley. Southern Valley sort of sits within the Wairow Valley, and that's maybe 25% of the Marlborough region, and the Awatere is around the balance, about 30% of the Marlborough. So the Wairow Valley is the big one. It's flat, and it's easy to be managed, I guess, from a vineyard point of view.
What I'm curious about is, because you have these two main areas, and we're talking a lot about, the two differences and how the blending comes into place. When the grapes are arriving into the winery, are these two valleys separated? Do you use different yeast or different temperature for it? How does it work when it comes about the two areas specifically?
We're lucky we have two wineries in Marlborough, located not too far away from each other, but within those two wineries, we've got the ability to be receiving, two or three different streams of trucks. So we've got 3 or 4 different receivable bins. We've got a range of presses. So we're able to once we push the button, so to speak, on harvest, there is a pressure to get fruit in exactly on time. So we definitely keep Wairow separately from Awatere, and particularly if for instance myself or one of my colleagues is walking vines ahead of harvest, and we identify something that's quite special or quite unique, or perhaps one of those blocks that overperforms, we're definitely going to keep that separate, and that'll ferment in its own tank. And then the beauty of that is that when it comes to blending, you might have 150, 200 parcels that you're assessing the quality of, and then you have a lot more blending options to create the final blend from it. Sort of putting the jigsaw puzzle together, I suppose. You've got all these components and a beautiful thing at the end, but it takes a bit of work to get it there.
I was wondering, maybe you could talk us through as a couple of examples of the quality process. What can go wrong in the winery? What are the things that you kind of worry about, thinking, okay, obviously I'm sure things go wrong all the time. It's about how you fix them. But any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, look, there's countless nights, especially at harvest, where you wake up either with yelling something or something that you're having a bit of a nightmare about. But I think an example would be, say your temperature probe on your ferment on your stainless steel tank. That could often freeze over or it faults out for some reason. So the SCADA technology that we've got that will alert us early on if that's a problem. And when we're monitoring ferments, that's usually done 2 or 3 times in a 24-hour period by our team. So anything that could go wrong, and certainly things do, I guess the key thing is to try and remedy it as soon as you can. It might be a press that breaks down. It might be an electrical circuit that's not working on one side of the winery, and so you have to run extension cables to make your pumps go. So, and another example perhaps is if your clarification unit isn't working, you've got a backload of juice that needs to get inoculated. So you need to find other ways of clarifying that juice. So you might need to cold settle some juice, and I mean that adds a bit of time. It's not as swift or efficient as running juice through a flotation or a centrifuge, but the good thing is you're working with a big team, and if you haven't got the solution, you're always chatting to you're the winemaker on your shift, or you've got ability to call other people to say, what do I do? And more often than not, someone else has actually had that problem, so you they know how to fix it. And the team of engineers, for instance, are always available, and again they're the experts in that area. So you've got a good team, and generally speaking, we're all on the same page. We know exactly what we want to achieve, and they've got their targets to hit. 100% of the time operating efficiently. That would be a dream if it was. It's not always 100%, but if you run into an issue, it's as I said, trying to address it and fix the problem before. I guess the thing that during, say, wine maturation in barrel, you've got all sorts of potential issues that could go wrong, either volatile acidity or Brettanomyces, that sort of thing. And again, that folds into our QC processes, that where our lab is regularly going around the barrel groups, sampling wines. For us, it might be once a month, it might be once every 6 weeks. So that's an analytical check. What is the VA? Where's it sitting at the moment? We plate our wines regularly to make sure there's no microbial challenges there. And on top of that, when those samples come through to the tasting room, the winemakers are giving those wines a sensory check as well. So there's plenty of areas where you're able to pick up if something's not quite right, and then you're able to react a lot quicker before it becomes actually a bigger problem than it actually is.
On that topic, I was wondering about that with reduction, which obviously is much more of a Sauvignon Blanc is very prone to being reduced and reduction. But is that a big issue for you, or have you basically got a handle on that? How do you find that sort of through the winemaking process?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, when you've got the influence of, say, thiols, which we do see in the Wairau Valley, and thiols are actually they're a sulfur compound. They're a mercaptan. So thiols and sulfury characters, they in a component, I actually believe they do offer a complexing attribute. You take sulfur or sulfides and mercaptans beyond the attractive aroma character, and they definitely become a negative. So throughout your ferment management, you're looking at certainly the aromatic characters that are coming through as the yeast do their thing, and you want to make sure that the ferments are healthy. So if a ferment is displaying some of those sulfide characters, you would give it some nutrient. You would make sure that the ferment graph is tracking okay, that the RS is dropping. You're looking at temperature. If I go around to some tanks and the sulfides are apparent, you're kind of like, oh, is it getting a bit cold? Are the yeast starting to stress out? Does it need some food, if you like? So yeast nutrients and vineyard and ferment health is really important to achieve just that fruit purity that Sauvignon Blanc has.
So you finish your lab analysis and your microbiological analysis. When the paper arrives, what is usually the first thing that you look at?
I usually have a scan through, and you get to very quickly note anything that's sort of out of spec, if you like. So that might be in our routine say barrel analysis, they're going to be checking sulfur levels. That's important, and so we've got we typically hold our barrels anywhere between sort of 30 to 35 parts per million free sulfur. So if you've got analysis coming through and your free sulfur is at 10 or 15, you know that you need to make an adjustment into that barrel. So you're writing a work order for the cellar hands to make a sulfur addition. So and likewise, if you return a result and the volatile acidity is higher than you'd expect, that's exactly when you go to the sample and you'd have a smell yourself, because if you've got an attuned nose, VA is something that's fairly straightforward to pick up. And if the other thing is, if I'm not sure, or you smell and taste the sample and it actually looks fine, you just get the lab to recheck it. As good as machines are, I'd rather double check that the analysis is actually right before you react to do something else. And if you do have a result that's way off, naturally I'm kind of like, well, what does your gut feel? Say, let's get it rechecked. Let's get someone else to also have a look at it, and we'll make a decision that way.
Marlborough is a cool maritime climate and has very distinct vintage variations. You can see that if anyone's interested in the Wine New Zealand run very detailed reports, and you can see about how many tons Marlborough brings in, and it really makes can go up and down quite a lot, whereas other regions around the world are very consistent. There is big differences in Marlborough. So what are the challenges for you with grape supply, dealing with both small harvests and big harvests and high market demand, low market demand? How do you manage that, and what are your thoughts about that as an idea?
You've mentioned a couple of key aspects. The fact that we are a very cool climate. We're a tiny island in the southern Pacific Ocean, so temperature at flowering would certainly determine the potential size of harvest. Obviously fruit set, so manage that, and it's sort of flow on to when we harvest. If you end up with a smaller crop, that'll ripen quickly. Vice versa, if you have a heavier crop, you can expect it to take a little bit longer. But the pressure's on, to pick, as I said before, sort of flavors and aromas when they're ready. And that gives you that wider spectrum of flavors. So changes, and you mentioned that changes in yield over the last few years have really been a bit of a roller coaster, actually. 2021 and 2024 are two of the lowest yielding crops that we've had in Marlborough over the past 10 years, despite growth in vineyard area and development. And in the middle, you've got 2022 and 2023, which were actually our largest vintages ever. So LTA, or long-term average, is something that we look into, because not only that have you got smaller or larger crops, but you've got tank capacity to think about as well. And if you're heading towards a larger crop, you need to think, man, have I actually got enough tanks to actually bring all the grapes, and or do we have to stop and close the doors? So a lot of factors. Or do we think about, do we need to resource some additional ferment capacity, and that might be a winery that perhaps has got the capacity to do it, and that is a cost you need to think about. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at. Vintage 21, as I mentioned, was small. That was well below LTA, and so we actually had to allocate our supply quite carefully. Whereas vintage 22 and 23, that sort of swung the other way, well above LTA, and then I guess together with the cost of grapes, there's increases there, supply chain challenges around the world, as we've all seen. The recovery's been a little bit slower. And I think the other factor that we certainly need to think about is the cost of living crisis, I guess, that the world is facing at the moment. It's definitely affecting purchase behaviour. We're maybe in a little bit of a fortunate area that wine is still considered a small luxury. So consumers, we're finding, are still willing to treat themselves and enjoy a bottle of New Zealand wine. So always something that we're thinking about. LTA is never going to happen perfectly every year, and I suppose it's sort of now we're thinking about, what have we got in tank. We're still a few months off knowing what vintage 25 will bring us, but and we're not really expecting it will be the same as what it was last year or the year before that. You never really know. Marlborough does have a unique ability to swing up and down, as you mentioned. So all we can really do is, I guess, look back at the past 10, 15, 20 years that we've been operating, and there are trends that tend to happen, and we're lucky that generally the summer and the winter are fairly consistent. So more often than not, it's sunny when it should be, and it's rainy when it needs to be. So
let's say I'm a new grower, right? But I'm slightly a bit of a mess. Okay, I'm just starting, and I want to work with you guys and supply the grapes. What is the first thing that you check in my vineyard? So is there like a quality protocol? And if we come and start working together, how would you help me in getting better in being a grower?
The first thing, if you're looking at a site, is vineyard health. How has it been managed previously? Are there issues? Are there problems? Do you have virus? Virus is a very real challenge that some blocks have. What's the soil health like? Is it vibrant? Is it alive? Is it what sort of temperatures are you recording? And if you're a grower that perhaps has been growing for a while, naturally we'd want to be tasting what wines came from that block in the past, if we have access to that. So the good thing is, as I said, with our grower liaison team, we've got the ability to provide really good advice, and we might suggest perhaps a different spray program or maybe a nutrient program that needs to be happen. Is there any deficiencies in the block that perhaps need to be addressing? And one of the other great things is our vine supply from nurseries is an important part of what we have. So, if there's a new grower who perhaps has 20 hectares of land, maybe they've established 10, they're looking to partner with us to, obviously we'll take their fruit, but they'd love to expand the rest of their block. Well, we have the ability to help provide the cuttings, the new rootstocks to go in. So that's sort of, I guess, where you start working together. We're going to sign a contract to say, yes, we'll take your fruit for X amount of years for this amount per tonne. Here are the targets that we're looking to hit. Here's the Brix levels that we want to see. Here's the acidity. Here's the vineyard health. Here's the all of those things. And also we can help you perhaps plant this block in Sauvignon Blanc, or if you wanted to plant, another variety, we'd look at that as well. So it's definitely a collaboration, and that ability of knowledge that we have, we want to pass on and share that with people who are keen to partner with us.
Do you have specific certifications that they need to apply to all the vineyards from the people that supply you grapes? So for example, let's say I'm again that grower and my vineyard is not in regulation with your current program. Is there anything that I need to do to balance with the rest of the other suppliers?
Yeah, so the probably the key one that we really do value is there's a business or a governing authority in New Zealand, and it's simply called Sustainable Wine Growing New Zealand, or SWINZ as we call it, and that's actually a body that the vast majority of New Zealand producers and growers has come to adapt, and we were lucky that probably well over 25 years ago now, New Zealand wine industry was one of the first to actually set up themselves as that Sustainable Wine Growing New Zealand. And so it looks into being accountable for what you're doing in the vineyard particularly and in the wineries, making sure you are, not just taking out of the land. We want to create an environment in vineyards where what we've got now is also there for the next generation. So you need to be careful with what you're applying, making sure you're being sensible about things. So having SWIN certification is almost a prerequisite for a new grower. We'd expect them to have that. If they don't have it, we would help them get that certification because on all our wines, you'll see the Sustainable Wine Growing logo on the back of the bottle, and that's that's a sign of that the industry really cares about what we're doing, and many industries around the world have a very similar authority, if you like. So that would be the key one, I think, is sustainable wine growing.
Thank you for listening. The 3 questions today were about maintaining consistency in a big brand, fundamentals of quality control, and challenges with grape supply. Dave, thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome, Nelson. Mike, it's a pleasure.